What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. So if you've been following us for a while, you know that I had a great big gap in building gaming PCs. And up till now on the channel, we've been taking a look at different items that I missed, from graphics cards to processors, but today we're going to take a look at putting it all together and building a whole PC. We're going to go all the way back to 2010 and put together a mid-range gaming PC. We're going to take a look at what the experience was back then, as well as how it holds up today. Okay, so 2010 was a great time for gaming. We saw the release of Call of Duty Black Ops, Metro 2033 and Battlefield Bad Company 2, which were all awesome games for their time. And to build this PC, we had to jump on the internet and try and find some old parts, and this is what we've come up with. For the motherboard, we've got this Gigabyte GHH55M UD2. Now, it's a pretty basic board. It didn't really come with a back panel or anything like that, so we've had to 3D print our own, but it gives us all the features that we'll actually need. And it is a first gen Intel socket LGA 1156 motherboard. For the CPU, we opted for something that was on the mid-range tier and was deemed back then as quite a good buy. This is the i5 760. It's a 4-core, 4-thread processor with a 2.8 GHz base clock speed, and it's going to be more than enough that we need for our build. For memory, we did some research and we found that a lot of average gamers at the time were using around 4 gigs of DDR3, and that's what we've picked up. We've got some Corsair Dominator, 2 sticks of 2 GB, which will give us dual channel, and will leave us lots of expansion for later if we want to upgrade the system. To keep in with the period of the time, we're going with a hard drive. Now, this is a standard mechanical hard drive that you would have seen in many of the gaming PCs back then. SSDs weren't really a thing, and obviously if you're building now, that's what you'd want to use. I suspect that this is actually probably going to be one of our little downfalls on this system, but once we get it starting to benchmark, we'll see how it actually gets affected. Now, for the graphics card, which we all actually want in a gaming PC, we've opted for one that we've recently looked at on the channel. If you want to watch that video, make sure you do. I'll pop a link to the top. But this is the MSI GTX 460. This was a mid-tier graphics card from Nvidia at the time. It has 1 GB of memory, and this one in particular actually runs really super cool and will go with this build fantastic. For cooling, we're going to stick with the stock Intel cooler. Most people probably would have had these at the time, unless you were going high-end or an enthusiast PC, then you'd have picked something slightly different. I'm sure this will actually probably count to most of the noise of the system anyway, but what we're going to do is we're going to get this slapped onto our test bench, get Windows 10 installed, and we're going to go for 10 because it's a more modern view and it generally works much better with lots of things, and we'll see how it benchmarks. Okay, so we've got the system built and it's all on the test bench and everything is actually going fine. We installed Windows and it took forever. I suspect that's because of the hard drive and the low memory that we've got on it, but it did get installed and there wasn't really any issues doing it at all. So now all we need to do is turn it on and get to benchmarking. Okay, so we finally got into Windows after a very long wait. I really do think that the hard drive and the low memory on this system are actually causing our issue. But we've managed to get into our first game, and the first one we're going to look at is a game from 2009. Now, in 2010, you would have actually still been playing this game. You probably would have been building a system to play it, and it's not one that actually takes a lot to run, but it will give a good demonstration of what people were playing at the time. So the first game up is Left 4 Dead 2. Now, this game will generally run on any kind of system, but at the moment this system's actually killing it. Apart from the really slow loading times, the game is actually playing pretty well. Now, this is in 1080p high settings and we're currently getting an average of 150 frames per second, and it's doing it with absolute ease. Now, you may not in 2010 have been playing in 1080p. You probably would have been playing in something like 720 or lower. So to be able to play a game like this still is actually great, a good feat. No matter what it's thrown at it, we're still getting 150 frames per second on average, and it's running absolutely flawlessly. So I don't think we need to keep testing this game. We will do after the video, and we'll put up a bit of a chart to see what we got averagely over time. But apart from that, this game will actually play, and you got a really good experience back in 2010 on this mid-tier system. So let's try another one. So next up is a game from 2010. Now, you definitely would have been building a machine just like this to actually play this game, because it was absolutely huge when it was released. It's Battlefield Bad Company 2. It's not necessarily a game that takes a lot of power to actually run. It will run quite smooth on most things. But it is a good test to this machine as we go. Now, this is currently sitting in, we'll check the settings. So again, this is 1080p on high settings. You probably wouldn't have been playing this at the time, because particularly consoles were only 720. So you might have just been getting away with it back in 2010. But clearly this is actually playable on this machine even now with a Windows 10 install. So we're currently getting an average of 64 frames per second, which is more than playable on this, and we could probably cap that with a bit of vertical sync at 60 anyway. We are dipping now down to the 55s when real things are happening on screen, but it's actually a more than playable experience. If you were to get any kind of issues with this, you could drop it down to 720 and actually get a big boost in frames per second anyway, but I don't think you'll need to. It's playing perfectly fine, even with the odd dips. Now, this was actually a great game at the time. I loved playing this on the console, and the PC version is just way better. Probably because we've managed to get the resolution up, and also the graphics are just much finer. I don't even remember it looking this good back in the day, but it's actually doing it, and you would have got a good experience. As you can see, no matter what we seem to throw at it, however many people, there we go, we've died, it seems to play really, really well, and that's the kind of experience you would have got, so that's really good. So let's jump again forward a little bit. We're not going to go all the way to the Cyberpunk days, because obviously this machine, and if you do watch the video on this graphics card that I mentioned earlier, you'll know that it just ain't going to cut that kind of stuff anyway. We are being heavily limited on the graphics card here. We're running at 99% in all these games, even though they were produced at the same time as the machine. But that's because it was a mid-tier machine. I mean, this graphics card was probably on the low to mid-tier back in 2010 from NVIDIA anyway. So we're actually not doing very bad, but we'll skip ahead again and we'll try something a little bit newer. Okay, so next up is Tomb Raider. This was produced in 2013, and you would definitely have had this machine when this game was released, and you'd probably been thinking to yourself, will it actually play it? Now, we're currently running in, we'll look at the graphics options again, 1080p, we've got VSync turned off, and we're on high settings. And it's not playing too bad already. The game looks absolutely stunning, as it would do in high settings anyway, and as it did back then. And we're currently getting an average of 55 frames per second with our current frames per second at 60. So we could probably see that average increase as we go up. As you can see, it's increasing quite a bit now anyway. There's no stuttering at all in the game. It's playing really, really well. But then this game is very well optimized anyway for the time, so it's not too bad. We'll try and find a bit more action just to get some more things on the screen, but so far this is actually acting very playable. I do not want to get caught by these. There we go, we took those wolves out. So we're currently averaging now 59 frames per second, even with all the action. It's a pretty dark map, but I don't think that's going to make much difference. So as you can see from those benchmarks, even this PC now, playing these games at 1080p high settings, are still actually performing really, really well. The system's very noisy, it's very slow to actually load anything, although Battlefield wasn't too bad, it must be very well optimized for its loading. But for the other games, you're going to be waiting around a long time just to get into the game. But when it's in there, it's actually playing really, really well. Now, as the system goes, obviously anything newer than that, it's not really going to play. But we will try something that is a little more esportsy, and we'll see if we can get something like Counter-Strike Go to actually play and see what we can kind of get out of that. So we've started Counter-Strike Go, and we've straight away hit a bit of a problem with this system. The loading times on Counter-Strike Go are just not that great. It is taking forever just to load into a bot match, but we'll keep waiting and we'll see what happens when we eventually get there. It's now been a couple of minutes and we're still sitting on initializing world when it actually loads the maps. But we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what it actually plays like in game. Now for Counter-Strike Go, you can't obviously use your MSI afterburner, but we've got the little ticket thing in the corner showing our FPS, so we'll kind of see really what a dynamic frames per second we're getting in real time if we ever actually get into the game. Okay, and we're actually finally into the game. It took around 4 minutes to actually load just into the server. We're running Dust 2 with some bots. Now, it's been a long time since I've actually played Counter-Strike. The last time I ever played it was Counter-Strike 1.6 days, so that will give you some indication. They've obviously kind of changed it because Counter-Strike 1.6 was actually a game that would run very quick and load very quick on any kind of thing. But as we're running around now, and I believe we're in 1080p, we've just pressed escape, so it's going to take forever to go and check the settings. This game is really super slow at loading on anything, and I really do put it down to that hard drive and the low memory. So yes, we're currently running in high settings, 1080p. We'll go back to the game. We're getting a lot of stuttering on screen, although the readout there is flipping between 102 frames per second down to 8. Let's see if it just smooths out as we play a little bit. We are getting a bit of jerkiness from the actual trying to move around and do anything. There's quite a bit of stuttering actually. I suspect the graphics card will be at 100%. Obviously we can't see because we don't have the MSI afterburner stuff up, but I'm clearly going to die against some bots in a minute. Although I managed to get one, that was pretty cool. We're currently getting around 101 frames per second, but this is dipping up and down all the time. It's not stable at all. Is this a playable game on a system like this? Not with the frames and frame drops that we're getting, not with the stuttering we're getting, and particularly not with the loading times either. The loading times are atrocious. You'll be waiting more time in a queue than you will be actually playing the game. But we'll drop the game, we'll see if we can drop the game down to 720. Or, yeah, we'll drop it down to 720 and we'll see. Might take a while for that to actually change, but we'll see if it actually makes much of a difference, because like I say, you would have been playing this at about 720. Well, not this game in particular because it wasn't around in 2010, but we'll see if we can get a playable experience at 720, if it ever actually loads back. Okay, so instead of the game actually changing to 720 and us being able to actually get kind of readout, it actually crashed the system. So that game's not very optimized very well for this kind of spec, and I probably wouldn't go for anything like this to actually play something like Counter-Strike Go anyway. But for the other games that it played from the 2009, 2010 and 2013 range, it actually performed extremely well. It brought back a lot of memories of older systems, particularly the noise, the slow loading times, and I think you could actually do quite a bit to this system to speed it up. Now, we're not going to get to obviously Doom Eternal full settings 2K kind of resolutions on this, but the CPU on this has got actually a lot more to go, and I think that's what we'll do next. We'll have a look at seeing if we can upgrade the system. I think the first thing we're going to look at is probably switching that old hard drive out for an SSD, doubling up the memory, maybe having a look at what other CPUs will work on this motherboard and see what the highest we can get there. And obviously look for a graphics card that is a little bit more pokier than this, maybe from the same era, and we'll stay with that kind of theme, but we'll do that in another video going forward. If you want to watch those videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and give us a like on this video if you liked what you saw, and we'll do some more.